You've been running. Not the kind of running anyone can see from the outside. Not the dramatic, obvious kind. The quiet kind. The kind that lives behind your smile when you say, "I'm fine, just busy." The kind that disguises itself as ambition, as hustle, as caring more than everyone else in the room. You've been chasing things for so long that you don't even know what stillness feels like anymore. And the cruelest part is that you thought the running was the thing keeping your life together. You thought if you stopped, even for a day, even for an hour, everything you've been holding up would collapse. So you kept going, kept pushing, kept reaching for people, for goals, for some version of your life that always seemed to be one more effort away. And yet, here you are, tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix, frustrated in a way that achievement doesn't touch, wondering why it feels like the harder you try, the further everything drifts. The relationship you poured yourself into, the one where you were always the first to text, the first to apologize, the first to make space, it didn't get closer, it got more distant. The career you've been white-knuckling, working late, saying yes to everything, proving yourself over and over. It hasn't rewarded you the way they said it would. The friendships where you're always the one reaching out, always the one making the plan, always the one holding it together. They feel hollow. And you can't shake this feeling that you're doing everything right and still somehow getting it wrong. But here's what no one tells you about chasing. The problem was never your effort. It was the energy underneath it. There's a frequency to desperation, and everything around you can feel it. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. Even your own peace of mind feels it and runs in the opposite direction. Not because you're not enough, but because you've been proving so hard that you are, that you've turned your entire life into an argument no one asked you to make. And that argument, that constant silent plea of see me, choose me, value me, it doesn't attract, it repels. Not because you don't deserve what you want, but because the chase itself carries a message. And the message is, I don't believe it'll come to me on its own. I don't trust that I'm the kind of person things flow toward. I have to go out and grab it, wrestle it, force it, or it won't happen. And the world responds to that energy, not with what you want, but with more reasons to keep chasing, more situations that require your effort, more people who take your presence for granted because you've trained them to believe you'll always be the one to show up first, more goals that move the finish line every time you get close. You've built an entire life around pursuit, and it's exhausting. Not because the things you want are wrong, but because the way you've been going after them is costing you the very thing they were supposed to give you: peace. And here's where it gets deeper. The chasing didn't start with you. You learned it. Somewhere along the way, someone taught you, not with words, but with experience, that love has to be earned, that attention has to be fought for, that your place in someone's life is never guaranteed, so you better keep proving you deserve to be there. Maybe it was a parent whose approval always felt just out of reach. Maybe it was a friendship in your younger years where you were the backup option, the one who had to try harder just to stay in the circle. Maybe it was the first person you ever loved, the one who made you feel like their affection was a prize you had to win every single day. Whatever it was, it installed something in you, a belief, a deep, invisible operating system that says, if I stop trying, I'll be forgotten. If I stop giving, I won't be wanted. If I stop performing, the world will see the version of me that isn't enough. And that belief has been running your life ever since. It's been behind every relationship where you overfunctioned, every job where you over-delivered and under-asked, every situation where you abandoned your own needs to make sure someone else's were met. You thought it was generosity. You thought it was love. But a lot of it, and I say this gently because I've lived it, a lot of it was fear. Fear that the real you, the unperforming you, the you who isn't constantly producing and pleasing and proving, isn't enough to keep anyone around. And so you kept running. Because running felt safer than finding out. But let me ask you something. And I need you to really sit with this, not just hear it, but feel it. What if the thing you've been most afraid of, stopping, is the very thing that changes everything? Not stopping as in giving up. Not stopping as in lying down and letting life roll over you. Stopping as in no longer gripping, no longer forcing, no longer contorting yourself into shapes you were never meant to hold just to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. There's a difference between moving through life with intention and clawing your way through life with desperation. And that difference is everything. Think about water for a second. Water doesn't chase. It doesn't force its way through rock by pushing harder. It flows. It finds the path of least resistance. And over time, not through aggression but through persistence and patience, it carves canyons. It shapes entire landscapes, not by fighting, by flowing. And the irony is that nothing on this planet is more powerful than water. The thing that never forces, never chases, never rushes to prove itself. It's the thing that reshapes the earth. Now here's something that might sound strange, but stay with it. You have that same power. You've just been using it backwards. Instead of letting your life flow into the shape it wants to take, you've been trying to hammer it into the shape you think it should be. Instead of trusting your own gravity, the natural pull of who you are when you're not performing, you've been manufacturing attraction through effort. And manufactured attraction doesn't last. It exhausts. It depletes. It leaves you wondering why everything feels so hard when you're trying so much harder than everyone else. Because the people you admire, the ones who seem to have things come to them, the ones who carry this quiet confidence, this settled energy, they're not doing more than you. In most cases, they're doing less, but they're doing it from a different place. They're not chasing because they trust. Not trust in some abstract, mystical way. Trust in themselves. Trust that they bring something to the table without having to announce it, prove it, or beg someone to see it. Trust that the right things will recognize them without them having to wear a sign. And that trust changes everything. It changes the way they walk into a room, the way they respond to someone who doesn't text back, the way they handle rejection, the way they wait. Because when you trust that you're not going to be forgotten just because you stopped reminding people you exist, you move differently, you speak differently, you choose differently. The desperation dissolves, and what's left underneath it is something magnetic, something you can't fake and can't manufacture. But here's the part most people aren't ready to hear. To get there, you have to survive the withdrawal. Because when you've been chasing your whole life, stopping feels like dying. It feels like everything is going to fall apart. The people you've been over-investing in might not reach out first. And that will hurt. The goals you've been forcing might stall for a while, and that will scare you. The silence that fills the space where all your frantic energy used to be, that silence will be deafening at first. And in that silence, your mind will scream at you. It'll tell you that you're being lazy, that you're losing ground, that everyone is moving forward while you sit still. It'll tell you to go back to chasing because at least chasing felt like doing something. At least chasing gave you the illusion of control. But I need you to understand. That illusion was the cage. The constant doing, the constant reaching, the constant proving. That was never control. That was a trauma response dressed in productivity. And the only way out is through the discomfort of letting go. Not letting go of your dreams, not letting go of your standards, letting go of the belief that you have to earn every single good thing through suffering and overextension. Letting go of the idea that rest is for people who've already made it. Letting go of the pattern that says, if something is easy, it probably isn't real. Some of the most real things in your life came without force. Think about it. The friendship that started from a random conversation you didn't plan. The idea that came to you in the shower, not during the 3-hour brainstorming session. The moment of clarity that arrived not when you were grinding at midnight, but when you finally let your mind go quiet on a walk you almost didn't take. The best things in your life didn't come because you chased them into submission. They came because you were open, present, available, not performing, not forcing, just there. And they found you. And that's not even the real shift. The real shift is this. When you stop chasing, you find out who and what was real. You find out which relationships were built on genuine connection, and which ones were built on your willingness to do all the work. You find out which goals actually matter to you, and which ones you were pursuing because stopping felt too terrifying to consider. You find out who shows up when you're no longer the one doing all the showing up. And yes, some things will fall away. Some people will fade. Some doors will close. And it will hurt. I won't lie to you about that. It will feel like loss. But what's really happening is a clearing. What's really happening is that the things that were only there because of your effort, the things that needed your desperation to survive, are finally being revealed for what they were. And the things that remain, the people who stay, the pursuits that still pull you even when you're not white-knuckling them, those are the real ones. Those are the foundation you can actually build on. Let me tell you what life starts to look like on the other side of this. You wake up, and you don't immediately reach for your phone to check if someone responded. Not because you don't care, but because your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's reply. You go about your day with purpose but without panic. You do the work that matters, and you leave the rest. You say what you mean, and you don't spend 3 hours afterward analyzing whether you said it right. You let people miss you. You let opportunities come to you. You let silence exist without rushing to fill it with noise and motion and proof that you're still relevant. And here's what's wild. That's when things start moving. That's when the text comes in from someone who says, "I've been thinking about you." That's when the opportunity lands that you didn't have to beg for. That's when you look up and realize that your life isn't falling apart because you stopped holding it together with your bare hands. It's actually coming together in ways you couldn't have orchestrated if you tried. Because desperation blocks reception. You can't receive what you're too busy chasing. You can't let something land in your hands if your fists are clenched. You can't hear the answer if you're too busy shouting the question. The very act of chasing creates a barrier between you and the thing you want. And the act of stopping, of opening your hands, unclenching your jaw, releasing the grip, that's what lets it in. Now I know what some of you are thinking. That sounds nice, but that's not how the real world works. In the real world, you have to go after what you want. Nobody's going to hand it to you. And you're right. Partially. There's a version of this that's passive, that uses surrender as an excuse to do nothing, that sits back and waits for the universe to deliver results to the doorstep while doing absolutely nothing to meet life halfway. That's not what this is. This is about the energy behind the action. You can still work. You can still build. You can still show up, create, put yourself out there. But there's a world of difference between action rooted in trust and action rooted in terror. One creates, the other consumes. One attracts, the other repels. One feels like building something meaningful. The other feels like running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up and you can't find the off button. You know which one you've been living in. You've felt it in your body. That constant hum of anxiety that says, "Not enough, not yet, keep going, don't stop." That's not ambition. That's survival mode. And you cannot build a beautiful life from survival mode. You can only build a cage that looks impressive from the outside. And here's where I want to get honest with you about something that might sting. Some of the things you've been chasing don't even want to be caught. Not because they're wrong for you, but because the version of them that your chasing self wants isn't the same as the version your healed self needs. The relationship you've been forcing, the real version of love that's waiting for you, looks nothing like the one you've been begging to work. The career path you've been clawing toward. the actual work that's meant for you, might come through a door you haven't even noticed yet, because you've been too busy banging on the wrong one. The version of success you've been measuring yourself against, it was someone else's definition. And you adopted it so long ago that you forgot it was never yours. When you stop chasing, you don't just change your behavior, you change your vision. You start seeing things you couldn't see before, because desperation has tunnel vision. It locks onto one outcome and blocks everything else. But when you release that lock, your peripheral vision returns. And suddenly, there are options everywhere. Paths you never considered, people you overlooked, parts of yourself you abandoned because they didn't serve the chase. Let me ask you something else. When was the last time you did something with absolutely no agenda? No goal attached, no outcome in mind, no way to measure whether it was productive or useful or leading somewhere? When was the last time you just existed without performing your existence for someone, or even for yourself? Most people can't answer that, because most people have turned their entire lives into a series of strategic moves. Every action has a purpose. Every conversation has an angle. Every moment of rest is secretly calculated recovery so they can get back to chasing faster. And they don't even realize they're doing it. It's automatic. It's the water they've been swimming in for so long they forgot it's wet. But there's a version of you underneath all of that. A version that doesn't need to prove anything. A version that isn't performing. A version that is enough. Not because of what they produce, but because of who they are in the spaces between production. That version of you isn't weak. That version is the strongest one you've got. Because it takes almost no courage to keep chasing. The world rewards chasing. It calls it drive. It calls it passion. It calls it not giving up. But it takes enormous courage to stop, to sit in the stillness, to let the chips fall, to trust that what comes back to you without force is the only thing worth having. And that's not even the most powerful part. The most powerful part is what happens inside you when you stop. Because all that energy you've been spending on chasing, the mental energy, the emotional energy, the creative energy, it doesn't disappear. It redirects toward you, toward your own healing, toward your own clarity, toward the things that actually nourish you instead of the things that just distract you from the emptiness the chasing was supposed to fill. You start sleeping better. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you're no longer running calculations in your head about what you should do next to stay ahead. You start feeling lighter. Not because things got easier, but because you set down the weight of everyone else's expectations and the imaginary scoreboard you've been tracking your life on. You start hearing yourself again, your real voice, the one that's been buried under the noise of should and have to, and what if they leave? And that voice, your voice, is quieter than you expected, but it's clearer than anything you've ever heard. And it says something the chasing never told you. You're already enough. Right now. Not after the next milestone. Not when someone finally chooses you. Not when you've proven yourself beyond all doubt. Now. Here. As you are. With your messy timeline and your imperfect progress and your history of trying too hard for people who never matched your energy. You are already the thing you've been chasing. And once that lands, not as a concept, not as a nice idea, but as something you feel in the center of your chest, like a key turning in a lock you forgot existed, everything rearranges. Not because the world changed, because you did. And the world is just responding to the new signal you're putting out. A signal that says, I'm not chasing anymore. Not because I gave up, but because I finally understand that the things meant for me don't require me to lose myself in the pursuit. They require me to find myself and stay there. So here's what I want you to carry out of this. Not as a theory, not as something you nod along to and then forget by tomorrow, but as a decision, a turning point, a line in the sand between the version of you that chased and the version that stands still long enough to be found. You don't have to earn your place in people's lives. You don't have to hustle your way into peace. You don't have to grip the things you love so tightly that your hands ache and your heart breaks. The things that are meant for you will come, and they will stay. Not because you held on so hard they couldn't leave, but because you let go enough to let them choose you freely. Stop chasing people who don't look back. Stop forcing doors that don't open smoothly. Stop performing for an audience that was never paying as close attention as you thought. And start trusting, really trusting, that when you become still, when you root down into who you actually are, when you stop generating all that frantic noise, the right things will hear your silence. And they will come. Not everything, not all at once, but the real things, the ones that matter, the ones that were always trying to reach you but couldn't get through because you were moving too fast, talking too loud, trying too hard. They've been waiting for you to stop. So stop. Breathe. Unclench your hands. Let your shoulders drop. Let the need to control dissolve into something softer, something braver. And if you felt that, if something in you just exhaled, even a little, then you already know this wasn't just something you listened to. It was something you needed. Drop the word still in the comments. Not for me, not for the algorithm, for you. A quiet marker for the moment you decided to stop chasing and start trusting. And if you want more of this, no hype, no performance, just honest words that meet you where you actually are, subscribe. I'll be here. See you in the next one.